In today's video, I spent 200 days in one block, Skyblock. In the first 100 days, I transformed my lonely block into this sprawling base with farms, a mob grinder, and a massive pyramid with crazy perfect chest organization inside. Plus, I defeated the Ender Dragon. But this place ended up feeling kind of bland. So in these 100 days, I will turn this small set of islands into a kingdom in the sky, complete with automatic farms, an OP village or trading hall, and of course, habitats for all of my new animal friends that we've made along this crazy journey. Since we defeated the Ender Dragon in the previous 100 days, I went back to the end to raid her dimension for any OP loot, and of course, the coveted Elytra. But before we get into that, if you could first just do me a couple of quick favors, then you would really make my day. You know that red subscribe button underneath the video? If you could turn that guy gray and become part of the Domination Nation, then that would be absolutely amazing. And one last thing, if you do go on to enjoy the video and you would like to see 300 days, then don't forget to drop a like while you're down there. If we get to 30,000 likes on this video, I will do 300 days of one block Skyblock. Anyways, let's get right into the first day, day 201. On the first day, I found myself back home and wow, was there so much to do. I took a look at my tools and armor and I remembered just how broke I truly was. But that was okay because I now had access to the end and I was going to skip through the entire process of trading for good enchantments by scamming shulkers out of their hard-earned goods instead. So I grabbed the supplies to craft myself an ender chest and I made 2 for extra storage inside the end, which I was definitely going to need because look at all these extra supplies that I was going to bring. I have the cows from the movie Barnyard, some wood, extra water buckets in case mine glitches again, which it probably will, always does, and other random items that I was going to need. And now that I had all of that inside the chest, I filled up my inventory with as many blocks as I could that I literally would never build with. And boy, can I not wait to make me some cursed bridges. Anyways, now that I had everything I was going to need in the end, I headed over to the portal, and before jumping in, I was quickly distracted by my overflowing mob farm. I low-key forgot just how overpowered these things were in Skyblock worlds. So, like any man of culture would, I sat there smacking these boys down to the Doom dimension until I hit level 69, the perfect way to begin a 100 days. So now that I had the haha funny number of levels, I went into the middle dome to my portal, and I jumped in. Except now that I was here, I remembered that I should probably bring fireworks and supplies, so that way I could enchant my first Elytra to streamline the looting process. So I went back to the center portal, and I jumped in, and I may have ended up spending the rest of the night making fireworks and grinding more mobs at the mob farm for tons of gunpowder. And while I was doing this, I became so tired of this terribly slow axe that I needed a new sword. So I went over to the chest to get some diamonds for the sword, and I found the convenient 3 shulker shells from the last 100 days that I just kind of threw in here, thinking that I would use for something, and I kind of just left them. But that's okay because this works out in the end, no pun intended, because I now had a shulker box that I could use for more storage that I desperately was going to need. So after getting the supplies from the chests, I made myself a sword, and I made this pretty dumb decision. I actually enchanted it hoping for a god roll, and instead I got some garbage, I got more garbage, I got super garbage, I got Adam Sandler, and I got garbage. My enchantments did not like me, and I quickly got to see all 69 of those sweet levels drain before my eyes. What a mediocre start to the first day. On day 202, I kept re-rolling my sword enchantments until I finally got a good roll with looting 3 on it. Except that actually didn't happen. Instead, I ended up wasting most of my levels on a sharpness 4 knockback 2 sword. But at the end of the day, this still kind of worked just fine, so I spent a little bit of time wiping out some mobs in the farm with my brand new sword, and I ended up with almost another stack of gunpowder, which would make 3 more stacks of tier 1 rockets. Nice. And now the only things left that I needed to bring with me to the end was an Unbreaking 3 book, a mending book, and a brand new anvil that I could use to make my Elytra usable. However, like I said before, I am broke. So I needed 22 more emeralds for a mending book, and the only way I could get Unbreaking 3 was by enchanting books, which you probably know from my sword just how lucky I am with that. So I continued the endless cycle of killing mob grinder mobs, grinding enchantments off of their gear drops, and enchanting books in the hopes of not getting smacked in the face by RNGesus himself. And during this process, I also started trading all of the rotten flesh that I was getting to that annoying cleric that broke into my home and was a squatter. Overall, this process took all of the night until literally sunrise, when I finally got an Unbreaking 3 book. I really can't script it like this, man. It was like the game was toying with me. On day 303, now that I had my Unbreaking 3 book, all I now needed was mending. So I took my diamond sword over to the bamboo farm to shave off a couple of years from its life. I mean, just look at its durability, man. It's so bad. So after eliminating half of my sword's lifespan, I collected all of the bamboo and I converted them to sticks to trade with my Fletchers for the remaining emeralds that I was going to need for that sweet mending book. And now that I had my book, I grabbed some of my very limited iron and I made an anvil and I combined the two together and threw everything into a shulker box. So I was now finally ready to raid the end. So I collected all of my things and I jumped down to the portal and I leaped in. And after getting here, I quickly made my way over to the Farlands portal, which I built my way up to. And instead of wasting my only ender pearl, for now, I made a trapdoor instead, and I bonked myself in the head to climb into the portal. And you probably guessed where this was going. I spawned in the middle of nowhere with no end cities to be seen, which realistically, I mean, come on. I figured this was gonna happen because my luck with end spawns was garbage. And speaking of garbage, this place was it, because I spent the next 3 days straight until day 206 running around the end, bridging non-stop with absolutely nothing in sight. Unless you count finding 2 more of those portal beacons, which are technically less common than the actual cities, which was kind of just a slap in the face. But anyways, this process sucked because there were so many gaps in between these islands, and I quickly exhausted my mismatched piles of blocks, and I now had to begin collecting endstone anytime I wanted to go anywhere. That is until day 206, when I finally found not 1, not 2, but 3 end cities all clustered near each other. Finally, I have been going so far in the end. So I quickly ran up to them in excitement, and of course, I was now out of endstone again, so I had to first mine some more before I could bridge my way across. And once I finally got close enough to the biggest looking end city, it ended up not having an end ship. So it looks like I was not going to be a flyboy anytime soon. And to top it all off, I now needed to collect even more resources to build my way across another gap just to get to that end city. Things were going well. On day 207, I had finally bridged over, and I was ready to take on the end city for some loot and shulkers. That is, until I learned how this was a baby end tower, because there was no loot rooms, and there was barely any shulkers. However, this didn't stop me from 1v1ing the shulkers that were there, with the old bow in the offhand treatment, even though I didn't have looting, which basically made doing that pointless. You know what? I don't want to talk about it. Anyways, after quickly dismantling this miniature society, I came out of there with a whopping 2 shulker shells. I was not living like Larry today. It was safe to say that I was a very bummed out person. So I took my frustration out on the locals. And for some reason, none of these guys were aggroing. They just kind of stood there and took every slice from my sword. It looks like I may have stumbled upon a hidden tribe of masochist endermen. And you'd be thinking, oh, they're not fighting back, so he's not going to keep attacking them, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because it did not stop me from stealing the pearls from them so I could keep bridging much easier. Especially since at this point, I was tired of breaking endstone. So after beating up all those endermen and taking their pearls, I ender pearled myself across this gap, and I made my way over to this even worse end city. It was abysmally small, and there were only 3 shulkers, and one of the 3 actually dropped me a shell. So far, my journey in the end has been a rough one. On the beginning of day 208, I left that dump in the dust because there was still one more end tower that I had seen in the distance that I haven't yet explored. So I began heading in the direction that I thought I had seen it in, and there ended up being nothing over here. So as I began to get very nervous, I cranked my render distance up to 64, and not only did I see the tower I was looking for, but right next to it on its right side was a massive end city with an end ship, baby. I was finally going to get myself an elytra so I could conquer the end. So I started running towards the larger, more relevant end city because it was way cooler and obviously far superior, but I ended up having to run by the small one first anyways, so I figured, you know, why not take it on? So I quickly yeeted the 2 shulkers downstairs, and I floated my way up Minecraft's equivalent to the Pokemon League because I wiped the floor with every single person here. And I had finally found my first loot room. And even subpar loot in the end still ended up being kind of crazy because I found myself a diamond chest piece with Unbreaking 3 and a curse. But I did also find this perfect god pickaxe with Efficiency 5, Unbreaking 3, and Mending. Now the only thing left that I needed for that pickaxe was Fortune 3, and I had myself a god tier Silk Touch pickaxe and a Fortune pickaxe. And to add the icing to this diamond loot cake, I also found 15 more iron ingots, which should help hold me off until I finally find a place to build an iron farm. Anyways, I had now finished this whole tower, and I had gotten 4 more shulker shells to add to my collection. And now that I was done here, it was on to that massive tower that ended up being surprisingly easy to get to. And this place was stacked. I made my way up the first small loot room, and I Control-Alt-Deleted all of the shulkers here before indefinitely borrowing all of their life savings. And honestly, these guys didn't have much, but I did get myself an Efficiency 4 diamond pickaxe and some more free iron. And of course, while I was at it, I stole their ender chest. Because I mean, who do you think I am? A free ender chest is free real estate. Anyways, after robbing those guys blind, I continued my way up the towers while one by one unboxing each of these weird purple Christmas gifts until I landed my way into loot room number 2. And inside one of the chests was an Unbreaking 3 Fire Protection 4 diamond chest piece, some other loot and free gold, and not to mention another free ender chest. For the next 2 days straight, days 209 through 210, I continued cleaning this place out of both shulker shells and loot. And after finishing up all of the loot rooms, I grabbed myself a slow falling potion as a precaution, and I nerd pulled my way over to the end ship after sniping away both of the shulkers that were low-key spawn camping me. And after making my way inside of the end ship, I was greeted by some more pacifist and or masochist Enderman, I guess, because I punched one in the face by accident because he startled me, and nobody did a single thing about it. I guess Minecraft really is like real life. So after making my way past those Endermen and killing the shulker in the middle, I stole both of the chests full of some more super OP loot. And after that, I took the coveted elytra, and it was now official. I was now a gamer who could fly. So I pulled out my anvil, and I popped my Unbreaking 3 mending book onto the elytra, and I named it RGB Gaming Wings, because you're not a gamer unless everything you own is RGB. And if you're wondering, I don't make the rules, I just follow them. When it comes to RGB, I guess, nothing else. Anyways, now that the end ship's loot was now my loot, I spent the rest of day 210 cleaning up loose ends around the end city until I was finally ready to go. So I organized all of my loot into the 2 shulkers that I had, and I grabbed myself some fireworks, and I set off with my brand new RGB gaming elytra that Santa had gotten me for Christmas. On day 211, after flying for only a couple of minutes, I found the perfect area to end off my looting excursion. There was another end city with an end ship that had a nearby portal back to end spawn. On its right, there was a second end city that was ripe for the looting. So the very first thing I did was fly my way onto the end ship and run inside and yeet the shulker into oblivion. And inside the very first chest was a Protection 4 Mending helmet, which was perfect to replace the garbage one that I had been wearing. And if you're thinking that that's the perfect drop, it gets better, because the second chest had another helmet with most of the other enchantments that this one was conveniently missing. So I whipped out ye old anvil, and I combined the 2 for Protection 4, Mending, Aqua Infinity, and Unbreaking 3. I was becoming beefier by the second. So now that I had a second elytra and my brand new hat, I went to the top of the ship for the dragon head, and I entered speedrun mode, because at this point I was kind of getting tired of the end. So to make things faster, I quickly flew over the middle top loot room, and I yoinked all of the expensive loot that was inside of both of the chests, and I sat there sniping out each of the shulkers from down below. And now that the middle area was cleared, I was feeling very lazy and efficient. So I flew back outside and onto the second loot room, where I saw another big end city in the distance with another end ship. I mean, I was excited about it, but at this point, I now had 3 more end cities to loot, and if you know anything about me, I cannot resist loot in the end. Or, I mean, loot anywhere, because I'm a hoarder. So I quickly finished off the 3 towers in this end city, and I flew off towards the closest small one so I could quickly borrow all of their worldly possessions and piece my way out of there. On day 212, after finishing the last end city, the speed run was still on. I quickly flew over to the end ship, and on the way there was another end city. At this point, this is going to be 100 days in one Block Skyblock's end dimension. Anyways, after landing on the end ship, I ran inside and I Hadoukened the shulker guard. Then I crammed all of the loot from the 2 chests aggressively into my thick with 10 C's inventory, and I yoinked myself another Gucci Elytra. And after that, I sped run through the rest of this surprisingly uninteresting end city. And now all I had left to loot was the tiny one for shulker shells, right? Well, if you thought that was the case, you'd be very wrong. Because the second I landed on top of this end city, 2 more massive end cities with 2 more end ships rendered in the distance behind it. So at this point, it seemed like I was reverse cursed. I spent so much time not finding any end cities, and now they will not leave me alone. So being the hoarder that I am, I couldn't resist looting all 3 of these remaining end cities, and overall, it took me until the end of day 15. And I had so much loot that I was officially done looting the end. But not before I accidentally flew into the ground way too fast and I popped a totem of undying. Which, not gonna lie, is a super embarrassing way to lose a totem. Just like the hardcore series where I lost one by drinking milk with no armor on near Guardians. Doesn't get much worse than that. Anyways, after I finished looting every end city in sight and I was done looking for more, and I may have lost a totem, I flew through the nearby portal and I went back into the main end portal so I could finally go back home. And on day 216, after getting back, I placed out a bunch of chests in the middle of my house so I could show off the sheer massive loot that I brought back from this mega loot excursion. Overall, I came back with 10 emeralds, a whopping 37 diamonds, 94 more gold, 127 iron, an absolute ton of shulker boxes, including enough shells to make 19 more, if I had the wood, and 5 new elytras. And on top of that, I ended up with this entire chest full of crazy enchanted diamond armors, diamond tools, and diamond weapons. And it doesn't end there, because to finish it off, I also stole all of the horse armors and this crazy amount of enchanted iron gear just so I could steal all of the XP from it, which, to be honest, probably was not worth it in the slightest. But you know what? I don't care, because I have all of this loot now and you don't. So stop judging me. Anyways, now that I was home and I got to show off all of my new loot, I decided to play cleanup for the rest of the day. The first thing that I did was pay a nice visit to my mob farm for some more drops and more of that juicy XP. And after that, I slowly emptied out my new loot into their respective homes. And now my diamond armor and tool chests all had the right items in their item frames, and I had a brand new spot to store my elytras and my shulker boxes. And now that those chests were cleaned out and organized, I spent the rest of the day grindstoning all of the iron stuff so I could smelt them into some more measly iron. Because until I do get that iron farm working, every piece of iron counts. On day 117, I moved the soul sand that I had with my singular nether wart because for some reason, they absolutely refused to grow. And I needed myself some more potions of weakness that I was going to use to torture my villagers. So if I can't grow it, then I was going to do the next best thing. So I grabbed a bunch of random blocks from my chests that I probably wasn't going to build with anyways, and I made my way back to the nether so I could build yet another cursed bridge. However, this time I was headed over to the nether fortress from the first 100 days. And of course, while doing this, I had yet another surprise visitor that I quickly sent to the Shadow Realm. His cousin Stepgast will be super excited to meet him once again. And after that incident was over with, I went back across the bridge and placed torches, for some weird reason. And while I was doing it, Stepgast's cousin's brother stopped by for a family reunion. But I whipped out my trusty Uno reverse card and I slammed the door in his face. Because I was not in the mood for solicitors, because I was on a mission. Anyways, once that small family debacle was over, I made my way into the nether fortress, and this place was god tier. Upon entering, I was greeted by a metric ton of wither skeletons, because this place was located in a soul sand valley, the perfect biome for a wither skeleton farm. Which means that I now had a renewable source of coal, and I could farm any and all wither skulls for more of those juicy beacons. However, since I didn't have any looting on my sword, none of these guys were kind enough to drop their skulls for me, which is kind of a weird sentence if you think about it. But that was okay, because while exploring the fortress, I stole any and all quartz and gold that I found, and I did manage to find 2 brand new blaze spawners that were ripe for the future farming. And overall, I explored around this place until about day 120, and I found a decent amount of loot here. I kept running into chests that had gold, random pieces of armor, and horse armor inside, and I found 2 of those staircase areas that were full of nether wart that I, of course, stole. I mean borrowed. There we go. And now that I had 33 new nether warts and a bunch of other devious licks, it was time to leave the nether a success. On day 121, now that I had the supplies I needed to begin tormenting more villagers, I built a small dark room near their trade stalls that I was going to use to get some zombies. And while I was waiting for things to spawn inside of there, I decided to go back and pay a visit to my mob grinder, which was more crazy than a Karen in a Target. I sat here cleaning up mobs for a couple of minutes until a zombie villager spawned that I was going to try and save. Keyword try, because once I spoke to it, it asked if he could talk to my manager. So he just disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. Anyways, after enough time had passed, I headed back to the dark room, and I was greeted by a pile of creepers and a skeleton wearing some pretty nice strip. And I accidentally turned this place into a bat shooting gallery. If only bats were useful. So with that failure behind me, I kept refreshing the spawns inside of the room, and I kept getting more and more creepers. And since my mob farm kept going non-stop, I had to keep cleaning it out to clear the mob count because it would max out and nothing would spawn at all. That is until I finally got lucky with a couple of zombies spawning in. So I placed down a boat and I broke them out, and this was an absolute struggle because this sus creeper hopped inside of the boat and I struggled to get him out without killing any of the zombies, which unfortunately I had to sacrifice one of because creepers gotta creep. Anyways, now that I have my boat zombie, I rode him over to the Fletcher, and the guy got so scared that he ran straight into the boat, which further proves to me that the villagers like being treated like this. Trust me, they love it. And after this, a second zombie spawned in that I didn't really have another boat for, and I didn't want any of the golems to get him, so I struggled to trap him back inside the dark room until I finally got him in there, and I brought him a brand new boat that I plopped him in, and my second Fletcher was so excited to see his new best friend that he also jumped in. And by the time this day was over, I now had 2 new zombie villagers, and I turned this place into a mess so no iron golems could walk in here and wreck all of my hard work. On day 122, I gathered all of the resources for my potions of weakness, and I then realized that I didn't even need the nether wart, which for some reason always make this mistake. But I mean, it kind of works out because now I had it for when I needed it, I guess. And I got to visit the cool nether fortress that got me all those wither skulls. So now that I had everything that I needed, I crafted a bunch of fermented spider eyes, and I brewed myself 3 potions of weakness, and I walked in on the villagers hanging out with their new skeleton friend that I had no clue how he got here. But that's okay because as the great Fit MC would say, clown down. And now that that was over with, I yoinked my first potion of weakness in the middle of them, and I fed them their golden apples. Or at least that's what would have happened if I didn't miss one of them with the potion and have to waste a second one. But yeah, these guys were now on their way to being one-stick trade boys, just like my OG hardcore world. You will be missed 07s in the chat. Anyways, now that I was stuck waiting for these guys to cure, it was time to mass brew more potions of weakness, and while I was doing this, I got the achievement Cure Doctor, which meant only one thing. My villagers were now cured for the very first time, and both of their stick trades were down to 26, which wasn't great, but definitely was a good start. To end off this day, I went back to my mob farm to smack some more dudes in the face while waiting for them to become infected once again. And after they were zombified, I threw another potion at them and I cured them for a second time. On day 123, the first thing I did was go back to check on my villagers once more, yeet another potion of anti-strength at their faces, and stuff them like Thanksgiving turkeys with golden apples. And at this point, it had been a little bit of time since I had been inside of this world, so I didn't really know which cure I was on. In my notes, I actually wrote I would be lying if I didn't say I lost track. But now that I'm reading back on it, this ended up being cure number 3, and I was once again stuck waiting on the villagers. So with all that time that I had on my hands, I thought it was finally time that I built them their very own trading hall. However, I was going to need more space to do this. Much more space. Because I do not build small structures. So it was back to the stone generator where I AFK farmed stone for the rest of the day, and I ended up with a pretty good haul overall. I got a whole ton of stone for my silk touch pickaxe, and the occasional cobblestone from, honestly, I have no clue why they spawn, but you know what? Free cobble is never bad. And now that I had all of the stone, I could make myself a brand new, non-flammable platform, which that last part is very important because you never know in these worlds. On day 124, I began the day by paying yet another of many future visits to my infected villagers, and this place had become a party. There was a random zombie just hanging out along with the 2 new villager Chads, who were strong and independent and apparently didn't need no iron golems, because they were just looking at these zombies in the face. And as much as I wanted to kill them, I couldn't risk ruining my trades, and I didn't really have any oak wood to replace any floor that I would break to banish them down into the void. So instead, I just cured both of my villagers once more, while totally not missing the first potion, because I never miss. And after this, I was going to go back out and begin building the brand new platform for my trading hall. However, I was quickly distracted by grinding at the mob farm some more, and checking back on my villagers somehow multiplied once again. There were now 3 zombie villagers that I have zero clue where they came from, but I guess the more the merrier, right? So I made some more boats and I plopped these guys inside so I could begin farming them as well. But things didn't end here because more and more villagers kept pouring in and turning into zombies. And there was no place for these guys to have been escaping from. At least not at this speed. So I had zero clue what was going on. But I was now ready to make the platform for my villager trading hall. And if you know me, like I said earlier, I do not build small things. Overall, this platform took about 60 stacks of stone, and it took me until day 128 to build. And of course, I kept running out of stone, so I had to AFK for more at the deluxe stone farm, and at this point my poor pickaxe wasn't exactly taking it so well. But by the time it was the night of day 128, the platform was pretty much done, and also full of mobs because I may have forgotten to light up the rest of it. So I had this big brain idea to try and kill all of the mobs. You know, I thought, I'd clear out myself, get some more XP, get some more loot. So I sat back sniping them, and they just kept multiplying faster than I could even take them out. So I said screw it, and I kind of just called it a night. But not before shooting this little baby Phil's zombie in the face. Imagine losing a hardcore world to that. On the morning of day 129, I went outside to check on the platform full of mobs, and big surprise, it was still chaos. But little did these mobs know, I was like Shadow the Hedgehog because chaos control. I sniped each and every one of the remaining boys out of existence. And now that my platform was clear, before adding the finishing touches, I went back over to my zombie Fletchers for one more yeet and a quick cure. And while doing this, I used up my last 2 golden apples. But luckily, I had just enough gold to craft 16 more. And after making those golden apples, I was beginning to realize that gold was going to become an issue very soon, and the only real way I could get it in this world was from the nether. So maybe in the near future I was going to end up making myself a gold farm somewhere on top of the nether roof. But anyways, now that the platform was clean and the villagers were once again cured, I added the final part to the platform, and I finally lit it all up with torches so there would be no more incidents. And after that, I spent the rest of the night growing and chopping down super spruce trees for all of the wood that I was going to need for this brand new villager trading hall. Which, may I add, with efficiency 4, was so much better than in the last 100 days. I think I spent like a solid 10% of that entire video just chopping wood. Crazy. On day 130, now that the platform was complete and I had most of the resources that I was going to need to at least begin my villager prison, I spent the entire day doing exactly that. I began by placing out spruce logs, stone bricks, and spruce wooden planks around the perimeters of the platform to begin the walls that were going to make up this massive structure. And after they were all up, I began building the outline for my villager breeder that was going to be the center of this building. So that way, whenever I needed more villagers, I wasn't going to have to move them super far. And so far, things were going really well, except during this process, I kind of made the structure a little off center, and I was not having that. So I spent the rest of the night, unfortunately, fixing it. The next day, day 131, was an adventure to say the least. I started the day out by finishing my little off-center issue, and I added the fences around the middle area that was going to become the farm. And after that, I placed all of the dirt in the center, and I surrounded it by a spruce wood floor for the beds with one extra space in between the middle, so that way whenever they got up from each day, they wouldn't jump on and destroy the crops. And now that I had that, I added the water to the center, plopped a composter on top, and I tilled all of the soil, so we were now ready to move in the villagers. And I had a plan. Since the sun was going down, all of these guys were going to become desperate for places to sleep. So I stole all of their beds and I put them in the new villager breeder. So that way they would all just move over here, or at least that was the plan. And I was very wrong, because this ended up being an absolute pain in the butt, no pun intended. I stole all of their beds and they kept fighting over which ones were still left until I finally managed to break the last one through this pile of villagers, while also definitely not punching one by accident. Anyways, at this point, no one seemed interested in my offer to move, so I came up with a brilliant diamond of a plan, and I used one of the beds to slowly lure each and every one of them out of their pen until they were close enough to the new beds, and this ended up looking absolutely hilarious. The mass villager exodus was upon us, because this took all night long and the sun was now coming up, and there may have been stragglers literally everywhere. But it was all good, because instead of getting them all the way over to their new home, I kind of just sacrificed them to the always hungry void instead. And no, I'm not sorry for it. On day 132, I walked over to my villager breeder, and I realized that I had built it wrong. I meant to have the full inside area be even with the floor on the outside, because that way the beds weren't that high up, and the villagers wouldn't escape. However, since I built it this way, half of the villagers escaped the second that it turned daytime, which made all of that hard work I did last night basically pointless. So yeah, I pretty much wasted the entire day one by one replacing the blocks without dropping any more villagers into the void. And let me just say, this was a absolute pain. And unfortunately, this time, there was no pun intended. Overall, by the time I finished fixing the villager breeder, it was already nighttime, so I figured I would go check on the villagers one more time before I go to bed, and there were even more mobs that spawned down here, and I had no clue where they were spawning from, because everything should have been properly lit up. But to be honest, I was done with today, so I placed down a couple of torches, just in case, and I cured both of these guys once more before just going to bed. On day 133, I woke up and went back to the villagers, where I waited until they finally cured. And at this point, something about their prices was very off. For the last 3 cures, their prices went up to 26 emeralds, and they've not changed since. And I only punched one villager by accident, and he was way far away, so there's no way they could have talked to each other. So at this point, I was kind of just at a loss. I had already used tons of gold and potions, and I still didn't have my infinite source of emeralds. But anyways, today I was going to continue working on my villager trading hall, and hopefully when I get back to them, maybe they'll be fixed. So the first thing I did was gather together my spruce wood and the stone bricks, and I began transforming the right side wing into villager storage. And this area now fitted up to 32 villagers, because I gave them each one space to live, because it turns out they don't need beds to refresh their trades, so their quality of life just got yet another downgrade. And while I was working on this area, I had another wandering simp visit me, and this man had sand for sale, which I was in desperate need of, because there's no way to get sand in this world efficiently, and I like glass, what can I say? So I bought myself a cool stack before then yeeting the 3 of them down to their doom, which, to be honest, I enjoyed way more than I probably should have. Anyways, to end off this night, I went back for the millionth time to check on those villagers, and they had cured once again with no new discounts. So it was looking like I had to cut my losses at this point and restart fresh with a bunch of new villagers. Which was great, because I totally was made of gold. I had infinite gold in this world. It was no problem. And that totally wasn't sarcasm. So on day 134, I left my house to see how the new villager trading hall looked, and even though it was nowhere near completion, I knew that it was going to turn out great. But first, I really needed to work on my tools, because most of them were almost broken, and they didn't even have mending. And since my 2 stick boys were failing me, I was stuck smacking bamboo with stone swords once again for the beautiful emeralds that I was going to need. And during this process, I burned through about 9 swords, but it did end up paying off because I got about 2 inventories worth of sticks to trade with my now super limited Fletchers. So at this point, things were at an all-time slow, so I said screw it and I cured the broken ones one last time, and I dispatched their zombies back to whence they came. And this time, I kind of just sat here and waited for them to cure, just in case another zombie came along, and once they cured, their trades decided to drop like they probably should have been, which really feels like the game was trolling me at this point, to be honest. But that was okay because I did some beautiful capitalism with the two, and their trades ended up dropping even further. Which kind of gave me an idea, because sometimes trading with villagers will affect their trades in combination with curing them, and since I haven't really been trading with anyone, maybe they were just being salty gamers. Either way, I don't really know, but now I had enough emeralds for a whole bunch of mending books for my gear. So in a way, you could call today a success. Just barely. On day 135, I went back to the villagers and I traded the remaining string that I had for some more beautiful emeralds, and I bought as many mending books as I could to begin fixing up my gear. I then grabbed my anvil and plopped it down, and I added mending to Choppy Toppy, then to the pickaxe, which I renamed Smooth Criminal, because honestly that's a pretty hilarious name that's perfectly fitting for a Silk Touch pick. And after that, I added mending to my mediocre sword just for now, and I named it Hinokami Kagura as a reference to both an anime and the sword from my Arlcraft 100 Days video. That, by the way, I would highly recommend you go and watch after this if you haven't already. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you know which anime this sword name is from. Anyways, I now only had one more mending book left, so I added it to my pretty banged up diamond chest piece that had protection 4 and Unbreaking 3. And at this point, I couldn't really think of a good name for it, so I kind of just left it. But either way, now everything had mending except for my pants, and I spent the rest of the day grinding away levels at the mob farm, and because so many different pieces of gear were being massively repaired at the same time, I basically gained no experience whatsoever while doing this. Also, I'd just like to throw this in here, while waiting for the mobs to spawn, I have no clue why I did this, but I finally decided to go over and delete Fernando the Wandering Trader from existence. This guy has been chilling in my old villager pen since the very beginning of this world, and to be honest, I don't know why I did this. I guess I just was tired of hearing him constantly drinking potions and slurping obnoxiously every single night. So I did something about it. What is he gonna do, sue me from the grave? Anyways, after taking care of Fernando, I spent the rest of the night repairing the remainder of my tools and melting more iron golems with lava because for some reason, they had become an infestation that loved to hang out on top of my house. If only I could do that to my neighbors in real life. On day 136, I was going to continue working on my villager trading hall. However, I needed glass for it, and way more than I could make until I had a massive brain idea. So I grabbed myself a bucket of water, some fence and blocks, and I went down to the platform by my end portal because I was going to use this thing to duplicate sand. Because pro tip, if you place fences under an end portal and drop blocks with gravity such as gravel or sand into the portal, they will break before entering and they will duplicate. So after using the water bucket to add fences underneath, I dropped a little over half of the sand inside to test it out, and I jumped inside the portal where I was ambushed by this sussy witch that I quickly pushed off the edge of this obsidian platform along with this annoying trader and this poor zombie horse. I'm sorry, zombie horse. Anyways, after checking my inventory, I indeed did duplicate all of the sand that I had dropped in, and my new glass business was now in full swing. So I left through the main end portal, and I spent the rest of this day dropping more sand into the portal and retrieving it back from the end. And I didn't keep going all night because within no time, I already had amassed 14 stacks of duped sand. My sand issues were officially over. So to celebrate, I was back to cleaning up those pesky iron golems with lava buckets, and I now had it down to a science. By the time the sun was rising, I had earned myself 27 more iron ingots. On day 137, I started off the day by finally moving our two Fletcher friends back into their cubbies and freeing them from their boats so we could do some more capitalism. And I traded a full stack of string for tons of juicy emeralds. And at this point, these guys were now actively refreshing their trades. And you know what? 20 sticks per trade isn't perfect, but it's definitely better than what it was before. Anyways, I now had enough emeralds to buy the remaining mending book that I needed for my leggings, and I bought an extra so that way he could level up, because I needed more name tags so I could name all of my brand new mob friends. But for now I had what I needed, so I went back to my chest full of leggings to look for an easy way to get protection 4 before adding mending. And I made this very expensive decision to waste 2 additional protection 2 Unbreaking 3 leggings to combine them all together for Unbreaking 3 and Protection 4. And now that I had that, I gave them Mending, and I came up with the perfect name, Apple Bottom Jeans. And while I was on my naming A game, I renamed my boots into Heelys, because they were far superior to those pathetic Yeezys that everyone always names their boots. Why didn't I name them boots with the fur to match the leggings? Couldn't give you an answer for that. I might end up changing them in the future. We'll see. But for now, I was going to be the cool kid on the playground, being yelled at by the teachers, rolling around on my brand new pair of Heelys. A cool kid that had full Mending, Prot 4, and Unbreaking 3 armor, may I also add. Now that my armor was mostly complete and I had the sand for glass, I now needed a ton of wood for building. And luckily, since I had the nether, I could use lava to smelt all of the glass instead of wasting more of the wood on charcoal. So I began planting more super trees and harvesting them for spruce wood until I remembered something that I meant to do literally forever ago. So I took some of the wood and I made chests and hoppers with the freshly borrowed iron, and I added them underneath the mob farm, so now all of the drops that dropped from entity cramming deaths could now be saved. Plus, I now didn't have to clean out my inventory literally every single time I used the thing. So that was pretty good. Anyways, now that my drops were no longer being wasted, I spent the rest of the night until sunrise harvesting spruce wood, and I ended up with exactly 8 stacks, which to be honest, wasn't really a lot for what I needed, but it would do for now. On day 138, I used the remaining borrowed iron that was generously donated by those iron golems to make 3 new iron buckets, and I traveled back to the nether in search of some easy lava. I put on my elytra and I flew on down and grabbed myself 3 more buckets for easy furnace fuel, which to be honest, I just now thought of, which is kind of embarrassing. So after this painless trip, no pun intended, I flew back up to the portal and I went back to my construction site where I placed out 4 furnaces, each with their own bucket of lava and a stack of sand, so I could start amassing my glass army while I was working on the trading hall. And I spent the rest of the night working on the entrance that I had already planned out in a creative world, and things were going pretty well. This place overall was going to look so good. That is, until I was interrupted by some flying sky demons who just so happened to be my favorite Pokemon, because they were basically Zubats. They were everywhere and anywhere, and insanely annoying. So I took one last look at my progress, and I went to sleep before the sun rose, because I was tired of dealing with these guys every day. On day 139, I was back to working on the front entrance. I started the day off by mirroring the top part from the left side to the right, which definitely sounds easy, but it was not in the slightest. However, after figuring that out, I filled in all of the glass, and I was very happy so far. However, I was growing tired of the terrifying gaps to the void that were in between my house and the villager's house. And I knew exactly what I wanted to go there. I wanted it to be a miniature garden area with grass, plants, trees, and other nature, so this place looked a little less stone and wooden. So I grabbed all of my remaining dirt and I began filling it in until the inevitable happened. I ran out of dirt. So I placed 1 grass block down so it would continue to spread while I got more, and I went over to do something terrifying. I traveled back to my old villager breeder and I broke the block under the water, and I very, very, very carefully began building a platform underneath so that way I could collect all of the dirt that I placed here. And this process never isn't scary. So just in case, I had my elytra on, because we are very, very close to the void, and I did not want to lose all of this hard work that I had done. If I fell down here now, even with the fireworks, I was going to have to be Lightning McQueen levels of fast to escape death. But anyways, this process had my palms M&M levels of sweaty, and I had to go super slow, so it ended up taking all night, which is pretty sad when you think about it. But as Tommy Pickles from Rugrats always says, a baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do. But just replace baby with like Minecrafter, I guess. On day 140, I spent most of the day doing pretty much the same thing as yesterday. As sad as it is, just getting all of that dirt back took this long. And now this area looked like some sketchy back alley Pokemon arena like in Detective Pikachu. But I guess that was okay for now because it was not going to be there for much longer. Anyways, after removing all of that dirt, I evicted the last 2 villagers from living, and I finished up the dirt patch next to my house that was quickly turning into grass. So now that I had some extra dirt, I began began filling in the gap on the other side as well, so that way this whole area was just going to look a lot nicer and it was going to be a lot safer. And now that the danger of that gap is gone, I spent the rest of the night adding additional touches to my pyramid because by the time these 100 days were over, I wanted there to be some kind of theme for all of the buildings, especially because as they were now, they were way too plain looking. So I continued working on it through the night, and by the time it was sunrise, this is how far I had gotten. At this point, I was still pretty unsure how I felt about it. I mean, it was very unfinished, but at the same time, I'm also very, very indecisive. If I was a character from Demon Slayer, I would probably be Zenitsu. For days 141 through 148, I began grinding out the process of finishing this colossal trading hall. And honestly, I think I bit off way too much here. I had to keep chopping down more super trees to fuel the pure amount of wood that I was using, and building the roof of this thing was an awful process to say the least. I started out by adding some long wooden beams over the center room that were going to act as border for the massive sunroof this place was going to have, so that way there was a lot of natural light inside. And after finishing those, I finished up the first wing worth of villager slots, and I moved on to begin building the second. And after finishing up the inside part of the second hall of villagers, I tested out an idea that I had for different roof styles over each of the 3 trading areas. After taking a quick flight overhead with my elytra, it actually turned out really, really good, which meant that I now had to mirror it over to the other side and make a slightly different version of it for the back section of villagers. And this place would be ready to start my booming Emerald Empire. However, the back area had a lot more space, so I designed it a bit differently with 3 different center boxes of villager trade spots, which totaled out to be enough space for an additional 62 villager traders, which is probably overkill plus ultra, but I mean, maybe one day I'll maybe use all these villagers? You never really know, although in a Block Skyblock world, probably not. But either way, the only thing left for me to do with this massive structure was to finish the roof over the back area and add some glass to the center, and then we would finally be done with this nightmare. On day 149, instead of doing exactly what I just said, I was back to messing around with my zombie villagers because, you know, I like emeralds, and I wanted more. And speaking of emeralds, while I was here, I traded away all of the string that I had been getting from the mob farm for some more juicy emeralds that I used to get some more decadent lanterns, which if you didn't know are far superior to plain old gross icky torches. So now that I had more lanterns, I built up with stone and I placed them along with chains in front of each of the front windows for the villager trading hall. So that way there would be a little extra light in the front, and honestly, lanterns just look really nice for decoration. Let me know in the comments below if you guys love lanterns or if you prefer gross, icky torches. Anyways, after this, I spent the rest of the night testing out other ways to make the entrance look much nicer. I began by smelting lots of clay so that way I could make some clay pots, and I tested them out on the slabs on the left side of the building with saplings and flowers inside, so they were kind of like those pots that you hang under windows. And honestly, I ended up liking these a lot. They looked really nice. So I popped a bunch more clay into the furnaces, and while I was waiting for them to smelt, I planted some more oak trees in the grass field near my house, so that way I could use my shears to get lots of oak leaves that I could use for another finishing touch to the front of this villager trading hall. After getting the leaves from the once proud oak tree, I added them to the areas under each set of hanging flower pots to act as some kind of bushes. And now, this place was looking great. I always say it looks good, but it looks great now. So after all the leaves were placed out, I crafted the remaining pots for the opposite side, and I placed them all down on the windowsills symmetrically to the other side, and I ended up being very happy with how this place turned out. On day 150, I crafted myself 2 fletching tables for the 2 brand new zombie villager friends, and I headed back to pay them a friendly visit where I cured them both, and this time I sat here waiting until they turned back to normal, so that way I could place down the fletching tables and test their trades for the first time. And not too long after waiting, the first guy cured and ended up having a 20 emerald stick trade, which was not that bad. So I leveled him up a bunch to lock in his profession, since this sometimes speeds up their discount process, and I left the 2 down there to be tormented once more because today I was going on another journey to the Nether. But this time, I was after gold, and tons of it. So I went back to my chest to grab some of the little gold that I had left, and some netherite scraps, and some ancient debris that I could cook in a furnace, so I could make my very first piece of netherite that I was going to use to craft a lodestone. In fact, this is going to be the first lodestone ever in this world. And And you may be asking, why do I need a lodestone? Well, if you don't know, lodestones are literally a god tier block in Minecraft. I was going to place it in the nether and use a compass to right click it so I could always find my way back home, even though the nether is a massive jungle of torture. So now that I had myself a way back home, I spent the rest of the night brewing some potions of fire resistance just in case I had some sad lava incident, and I was organizing all of my supplies into a shulker box. And while I was at it, I also filled up my entire ender chest with more shulker boxes just in case I found anything crazy that I wanted to loot, which, I mean, let's be honest, I probably was going to find a lot of loot. I just know how to sniff it out, and I cannot resist loot. I like loot. As Mr. Krabs once said, I like money. Anyways, now that everything was ready to go, I cured both of my villagers one more time, and I grabbed a ton of sticks to trade with them, and I waited until they were cured again to see if their trades were actually improving, unlike those last two ungrateful guys. And after the first one had cured, his trades were now down to 12, which was fantastic. My trading drought was finally over, so I traded him some string to level him up, and he was pretty much ready for one more cure until 1-for-1 stick trades. So after the first guy was taken care of, the second guy finally cured, and he ended up with 26 emerald trades, which might be off, but to be honest, I don't really know, because I kind of lost track of which of the two zombies in this boat were which, because every time one of them cured, they would drop that piece of fence that they were holding, and the other one would pick it up, and to be honest, I have no clue who had it first. So maybe this trade was bad, but there is still hope. Maybe the trade was, you know, worth something. But for now, that didn't matter because on day 151, I ran straight into the nether, ready to go on a looting expedition. And upon getting to the other side, I placed down my lodestone and I connected my compass to it. And while I was here, I placed down my anvil and I named it Nether Spawn. And now that I had this compass, I could find my way back to the portal no matter which way or how far I was. So now that I was 100% prepared, I set out to begin my search for gold. I began by flying around my nearby spawn to find areas that I hadn't picked clean yet, and I stumbled upon this nice little ravine that was full of gold ore and a ton of clusters of nether quartz. Overall, I was only down here for a couple of minutes, but by the time I ended up leaving, I had found myself 43 free gold already, which was the equivalent of 5 golden apples, which was good, but was very far from what I was going to need for these massive stonks. So I donned my RGB gaming wings, which you can't really buy online, but you could get the next best thing, which is my merch at PainDomination.shop. Anyways, shameless plug over, I took flight for the first time so I could look around my nether spawn. And because it was all mostly just soul sand, there wasn't really much gold, but I did find myself a nice abandoned portal to rob of their gold chicken McNuggets and a free block of gold. Now after getting that free gold, I set back off looking for a good area to get some more gold, or hopefully a bastion that I could rob. That is until I found this small netherrack area with some pretty good gold coverage. I sat here mining all of the gold and some of the nether quartz while also farming some juicy gas kills, which always seem to drop their loot into lava, which means I'm probably not going to be resummoning the Ender Dragon anytime soon. But that was okay because after spending the rest of the day mining, I ended up with a little over a stack and I was once again visited by yet another stepghast. Man, the nether is really a wild place. On day 152, I set back out in search of more gold, and the first thing I encountered was yet another stepghast. Except this time this guy was stuck in the ground, and I made quick work of him and he dropped me no gas tears. What a guy. After killing Stepghast, I continued flying around in the hopes of finding a bastion, but instead I stumbled upon yet another abandoned portal, and this time there were some free iron nuggies and 2 gold blocks, which I will never complain about. I also managed to collect all of the gold in this area, and I fought this piglin over the loot where I hit every single shot and I didn't miss a single time. I never missed my bow shots, ever. Overall, this new area that I had landed in was absolutely cracked with free gold. Plus, while I was here, I got to mine out this massive chunk of magma blocks that I could use in the future for some cool automatic farms at my base. I'm looking at you, mob farm. For day 153, after leaving the crazy gold mine, I found myself flying through a warped forest. And sure, there was gold here, but most of it was kind of too much effort to get, so I was going to keep flying by until I saw my first bastion. So I landed nearby and I quickly swapped to my chest piece because you should always do that when you land, even if you're not playing hardcore, because I see so many people online dying stupid ways because they don't switch off their elytras. Okay, rant over, I swear. Anyways, after that small rant, I went to check out what kind of loot there was to borrow here, and that's when I was greeted by the first of their Piglin Brute leaders. And even though this guy was a damage sponge, I easily made quick work of him, and I stole the loot out of the nearby chest that had a free gold block and an efficiency 3 diamond pickaxe, which overall wasn't that good, but honestly, loot is loot, and I like loot. After this, I kept exploring around this, and it ended up being one of those crummy, broken bastions that didn't really have much loot, but just in case, I dug up to the top to see if there was an OP chest room full of death, and instead I found a tiny hidden little chest with a diamond shovel and some other random loot inside. So I ran back down and I began exploring the lower floors, if you could call them that, and there only ended up being about 4 more chests that mostly had mediocre or garbage loot inside. That is, until I found this one chest on the very bottom floor that had 1 gold block, a golden apple, and an iron block, which, if you think about it, still isn't that good in comparison to other bastions, but you know what, I guess next year I will not be trick-or-treating here again. Overall, I ended up being here until the end of day 154. On day 155, I left the bastion in search of, you guessed it, more gold to fuel my villager torturing needs. And after a short flight, I quickly found myself in prime gold real estate. This stuff was everywhere. In fact, there was so much stuff that I actually gave up on collecting any of the quartz, or else I was going to be here for the entire 100 days. This was going to become 100 days of mining in the nether. And at this point, it just might end up being that anyways, because for the next 3 days straight, I explored around this area and non-stop mined tons of gold. I even got this crazy mid-flight snipe on a ghast where I was able to fly through his drops before they hit the lava, and you would totally be seeing that right now if I was recording it when it happened. Good job, me. But anyways, after cleaning out enough of the gold and flying further in the nether, on day 158, I stumbled upon another nether fortress, and this one was perfect because it was in the middle of a lava ocean with soul sand valleys around it. So this place was perfect territory for wither skull hunting. But for some reason, my game was lagging awfully here. And even when the frame rate went back up above 60, the tick speed was still very far behind, and it made hunting here an awful experience. However, that did not stop me from playing Fruit Ninja with all of the wither skeletons with 0 luck for skulls. But that was okay, because next door there was another ruined portal that had some more free gold. And more importantly, in the distance was a giant bastion with an OP double chest in sight. Tomorrow was going to be a good day. So on the next day, day 159, I donned my RGB gaming wings yet again, and I flew over to the abandoned portal that didn't really have much loot, but there was free gold, and you know what? Free gold is free gold. And if you think about it, that's what I was here for at the end of the day. Anyways, now that I was done here, it was on to this beast of a bastion. And let me tell you, this place was perfect. It was one of those bastions that had a super out in the open loot room with a ledge nearby that I could use to pick off all of the bad boys. So I could go in there scot-free and borrow things with ease. And that is exactly what I did. I sat here dragging these bow shots, see what I did there, all over their faces until the area was nice and safe. And now that it was, I built myself over with netherrack to take my winnings. And the top 2 chests were kind of underwhelming to say the least. I ended up with 1 ancient debris, 2 gold blocks, and some other random subpar stuff, including an iron looting 3 sword, which was kind of insulting to be honest. I continued exploring through this bastion, and I wasn't really finding much in this first tower area, but I did get this nasty looking kill on this sus brute. So after finishing the first tower, I made my way over to the center area, and it turned out this was one of the bastions that had nether wart in the center area, which was a major throwback on this channel. If you've been here since the very first 100 days video, then you probably remember this was how I got nether wart in my OG hardcore world, because for the life of me, I could not find a nether fortress anywhere in that world. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you've been here for that long and if you remember that, because that was like the beginning of this year. That was like in March, which is crazy. Also, maybe leave some other crazy things in the comments down below that had happened in that OG world, just as like a good throwback, because honestly, I miss that world so much. Like, do you guys remember how I drank away my invisibility potion when I was making that guardian farm, and I got my first totem of undying popped, and I almost lost the entire world because I drank away my invisibility with milk to get rid of mining fatigue because I didn't kill the guardian elders before building the guardian farm. Good times, good times. Let me know in the comments below. I really want to see those comments. Anyways, with that little rant out of the way, I executed the remaining peeps here, and there was about 4 more chests for me to loot that had some decent stuff inside. I ended up finding some more gold and iron, some ancient debris, some nether scrap, a Soul Speed 3 book that is kind of useless in this world if you think about it, and this crazy chest that had 9 freaking obsidian inside. So it was safe to say this journey was pretty successful, and at this point I probably had enough gold to hold me over, so I was done in the nether. However, I was this far from my portal and I had an idea. So I flew back to the nearby abandoned portal to steal some more obsidian so I could make myself a full nether portal on the nether fortress just to see if it made a sky platform like it does in regular Minecraft. Because honestly, that would be super useful for making additional islands in the future. So I constructed this portal and I was trying to get a blaze to shoot it to light it up because I was too lazy to place a shulker. However, they refused to shoot anything but me apparently. And honestly, I don't really blame them. So I found the shulker and I grabbed my flint and steel, and just before I lit the portal, a blaze shot it and lit it up. Honestly, I never knew that blazes could be so childish. But with that aside, it was time to test out my new theory. So I put my elytra on just in case this didn't work out, and I went through the portal and, I mean, it works, but I had no clue which way was home because I never placed a lodestone at my base. Honestly, I should have done that instead. Would have been much bigger brain. And I know what you're thinking, you could just use a regular compass to go back to spawn since one block is at spawn. And that would be a great idea if I had redstone or a regular compass on me. But I didn't, so that was not really an option. So on day 161, I set off on another journey to follow the compass home through the nether. And if you know anything about flying through the nether, sometimes it really sucks. I kept running into dead end after dead end after dead end after dead end. Yeah, there's a lot of dead ends. And to make any progress towards my compass direction, I had to go way out of my way until I found a third nether fortress. And if you know me, I couldn't not stop here, honestly. So I landed in, switched to my chest piece, and I began exploring. And this place was made of pure profit. There were tons of chests, and the very first one that I opened had 2 voluptuous diamonds inside. Bet you didn't think you were gonna hear that today. Anyways, I know I say this every time, but this fortress was god tier. If this fortress was a monster from the anime reincarnated as a slime, it would be a disaster rank. Because there were literally wither skeletons everywhere. So I made one of the most massive brain plays ever, and I took the looting 3 iron sword that I got from the bastion, and I used my anvil to repair it with some iron. And let me tell you, this was such a good play, because things were all uphill from here. At first, while hunting different wither skeletons, not much was dropping until I had gotten my very first skull. And it was safe to say, I was very excited. But things were going to get even better from here, because literally 2 skeletons later, I had gotten back-to-back wither skull drops. And I was now fully prepared to fight the first ever wither in this world, which was crazy because I didn't expect to come here at all with wither skulls. This place was insane. Cracked, some would even say. So of course, I had to keep hunting because I am the best at not being distracted ever in Minecraft, and also apparently the best at finding perfect nether fortresses in my 1-block world, because not long after that 3rd skull, I had a 4th one drop while I was dodging this big lava chungus. Overall, this place was absolutely insane, and I was here until the end of day 164, when I ended up in the middle of this absolute war above the nether fortress. There were blazes shooting me from all directions, there were ghasts B-52 bombing me from above, there were zombie piglins constantly getting in the way of shots and almost making my life a lot harder, and even some more wither skeletons that didn't really end up dropping much. Overall, from this battle, I ended up with 5 fresh wither skulls, exactly 69 coal, which was hilarious, and my looting 3 sword was just barely holding on. These days were good days. On day 165, while trying to leave, a whole horde of wither skeletons spawned in near me, and I couldn't resist. So I struggled my way through my pile of shulkers to find the anvil, and I once again placed it down and repaired my sword just in time for them all to despawn. So I figured I would make a deal with myself. I'll hunt any withers that I see while trying to find the exit, but once I find the exit, I was out of there. I was going to leave. And to be honest, this place was huge and confusing, so I didn't really find the exit that quickly. But do you know what I did find? If you guessed a 6th Wither Skull drop, then you would be right. And honestly, this place ended up being more efficient than both of the first nether fortresses that I found in this world combined, which kind of explains why there were also a ton of blazes and magma cubes spawning everywhere. This place was literally heaven and hell. But it was finally time for me to leave. So once I found an exit, I quickly took flight so I could move on to better things. Like, you know, actually working on my base. Or at least that's what I thought I was gonna do, because I ran into yet another super exposed nether fortress. However, this place kind of sucked. There were no wither skeletons and hardly any chests. I mean, minus from this one super good chest that had 3 diamonds inside, which are always good. I mean, because like, how else was I gonna get diamonds in this world, to be honest, besides mining that stupid 1 block? But yeah, besides that, there wasn't really much here. So after I finished looting the disappointing place, I continued flying towards home. That is, until I hit another dead end, and I had to turn around flying right back over this place. And this time, there was the motherload of wither skeletons. This place was covered in them. So I did a very small brain gamer move, and I landed directly in the middle of them, and I struggled not to get hit while switching to my chest piece. But overall, things were still pretty good, because I ate a golden apple to appease those beyond annoying blazes, and I Control-Alt-deleted each and every wither skeleton with no more skulls to show for it. On day 166, I was finally ready to head home. And this time, I meant it. No more distractions, no more wither skeletons. So I ignored the piles of skeletons that were continuing to spawn next to me, and I began the long and confusing ride home. I kept going in the opposite direction of the compass until this started to look familiar, and it turns out that I was not that far from home at all. I just had to go in a massive circle to find my way. But there it was, finally, my nether fortress that was by my base, and my super sketchy bridge that was made of tons of different blocks that did not belong in the nether. It was safe to say I was home. So I landed down near my portal and I went through, and the very first thing I did was lay out all of my shulkers so I could see and count everything that I had gotten from this massive trip, which ended up being quite a lot. I grabbed all of the gold from each shulker and I laid them out in my inventory to count them up, and I ended up with just short of 10 stacks of gold, which was perfect because my goal was enough for 1 stack of golden apples, which only ended up being 8. So overall, this trip was a mega success. And I spent the rest of this night using blast furnaces to smelt most of the gold, and I begun organizing all of this loot. On day 167, I started off the day by using my last potion of weakness that I had to cure both of the boys, and I waited here for them to turn back into villagers because I was pretty sure that the one guy on the right was going to have his 1-for-1 trades today. And boy, do these guys know how to stomp my hopes and dreams into the earth. The left one cured first, and he still had 26 stick trades, which sucks, but at least I didn't really have much hope for him in the first place. And then it happened. My right villager cured, and his trades were now also up to 26 emeralds. What was going on? It was like my villagers were all cursed in this 1-block world. So I walked away sad, not knowing what to do. And I kind of just spent the rest of this day finishing smelting stuff in those furnaces and cleaning out all of my new loot, as well as the random dump chests that I've been way too lazy to clean up that have been sitting here, you know, since the first 100 days. So it's safe to say that you could call today Spring Cleaning Day. Plus, while I was at it, I also made another piece of netherite that I would waste by putting into its item frame. Honestly, the things I do for organization. Anyways, now that I was back from my nether expedition and all of the loot and random dump chests were clean, it was back to finishing the roof of the trading hall, and there wasn't really much left to do. So I spent the next 2 days, days 168 through 169, nice, adding different windows and skylights to the back section of the trading stalls and waiting for the rest of my glass to smelt, while also filling in the remaining side windows and the giant sunroof windows in the center room. Kind of weird take here, but this place kind of reminds me of one of those food courts inside of some dying mall. That just, like, you know, the ones that have tons of sunroofs and a very bright and colorful food court with like the 1 or 2 stores that are actually open. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. That's just my take. Anyways, by the time the sun was rising, this place now had a full roof and was mostly complete, minus whatever decorations I would decide to add to the inside in the future. So I took a quick flight overhead to see just how well it turned out, and honestly, this place ended up looking way, way better than I thought it would. And if you're thinking it was overkill, I mean, yes. It was overkill. It was more overkill than the trading hall that I built in my super flat world, which was pretty insane. For day 170, I was hopeful that my villagers were going to start cooperating, but literally everything that could went wrong. I began the day by brewing more potions of weakness because I had ran out, and while I was waiting in between brews, I cured both of my zombie friends once more, and after I finished brewing my potions, I just kind of sat here babysitting them until the guy on the right cured with a whopping 26 emerald stick trade. Great. So at this point, I didn't really know what to do, so I killed a zombie, and I tried to break the boat to let him out, and for some reason, I accidentally hit him somehow. So I did some quick capitalism with the guy to make up for it, and I retrapped him inside of the boat, and I just kind of sat here sad, waiting for the second guy to cure to see if his trades were at least a little better. And big surprise, once curing, his trades were just as scammy. They did not move at all. So I broke their boat so I could separate him from the zombie, and I somehow hit both of them, which makes literally 0 sense. So after getting them out, I trapped the zombie in the boat, and I trapped the other guy inside of this glass prison, and I called it a day because things were just not going my way. On day 171, I woke up feeling pretty defeated, but I was not going to let a couple of wimpy villagers with some scam trades win. Hell no. So the first thing I did was pay them another visit, and this time I meant business. I placed down a boat for the mending villager so I could begin transporting all of my librarians to what I would like to call the Grand Librarian's Wing. So I boated this guy all the way there, and upon arriving at his destination, I ran into a couple of problems that I thought about while I was building this place. And the biggest problem was going to be getting each villager into their 1 block cubby space. So I tried a couple of things out. I first tried wedging his boat inside, but the second I ended up freeing him, he fled for his life, which honestly, I don't really understand because this was the opportunity of a lifetime for him, literally. So after catching him in a boat again, I thought of the next and probably more efficient way to do this, which was good old-fashioned minecarts. So I gathered some iron from my chests and I crafted 16 iron rails in a cozy looking minecart that was going to become my brand new best friend, and probably these villagers' worst enemy. After this, I placed down some rails that was going to lead him into his brand new home, and I pushed the minecart past his boat, which plopped him exactly where I needed him to be with ease. That is, minus the whole process of getting the minecart back. Yeah, that kind of sucked, but after doing this more, I will definitely work out the kinks. Either way, this was a mission success because my mending friend was now in his new forever home. So I spent the rest of this day doing the exact same thing with the rest of his friends. The second guy gave me some more trouble, but after that, I had it down to a science, and the 2 others went in with ease, and by the time it was night, they were all in their collective spaces. On day 172, essentially it was more of day 171. I started out by ruining my new central room by building a 2-block high area for me to continue transforming villagers into zombies without the fear of iron golems yeeting them into oblivion. And one by one, I delivered each of my Fletchers from that weird room in my base that I still don't know what to call, including the zombie boy, who I quickly turned just to see what his trades would be, and they were still 26 emeralds. Nice. Anyways, now that all of the Avengers were assembled here, I made another small dark room nearby in the hopes of spawning some zombies where the golems couldn't RKO them. And after this, I spent the entire night running back and forth while emptying out the mob farm, trying to get zombies to spawn in, and at first I wasn't really having any luck, but after enough tries, zombies began pouring out, and by the time the sun was coming up, I had all of these guys inside of boats, infected and chilling, minus the one guy in the back corner. So on day 173, I continued clearing out my mob farm and checking for more spawn zombies, and after the first try, I walked in on 2 skeletons, 1 creeper, which I was not ready for. So I sniped these 3 out of my plane in existence, and I went back to the routine. Smack mobs, get XP, run far away, check for zombies. Smack mobs, get XP, run far away, check for zombies. And honestly, I know I've said this before, but Skyblock mob farms are just so satisfying. When I finally do get to upgrade this one, I might end up making it into a hybrid, so that way I don't miss out on these crispy multi-kills. apples. Anyways, I went back to check for zombies, and there was finally a baby zombie, which is kind of funny because I've never actually infected villagers with a Philza zombie before. So, I mean, why not give it a shot? And just like that, all of my Fletchers were now ready to start their brand new group torture experiment. I mean, field trip. It's a field trip. Think of this as some nice Magic School Bus styled field trip to the afterlife and back. Well, let's go with that. Let's go with that. That's good. Anywho, since I haven't checked on any of the farms in like years, I thought today would be a good day to do that. So I paid a visit to my lonely wheat field with my Fortune 3 axe to maximize my yield because, I mean, what else was I going to use that fortune for? Let's be honest. And of course, after doing this, I replanted all of the seeds because I might be mean to my villagers, but I will not be mean to my fields because, I mean, how else could I eat that wheat? So after I finished up my field, I dumped all of the seeds and the wheat into a nearby chest, and I went on to collecting all of the sugarcane because books are still pretty useful for villager trades since I didn't really have infinite emeralds yet. And after finishing up the sugarcane, I took on the massive task of clearing out all of my bamboo farm with my diamond sword, and boy did Hinokami Kagura take a beating. After finishing off the bamboo farm, I crafted everything into sticks and I ended up with almost 34 stacks of these profitable boys, and my sword was all the way down into the yellow, which was basically meaningless to me because I had a crazy XP mob farm. But on day 174, instead of mending my sword, I had a much better plan. I grabbed some emeralds from my building dump chest and I traded for a brand new sharpness 5 book because today I was finally going to upgrade my sword. So I grabbed 2 diamonds from my diamond chest for the new sword, I crafted it, and I brought some lapis lazuli, that is how it's pronounced, 100%, and a grindstone over to my enchantment table so I could begin rolling for looting 3. And at first my rolls were complete doo-doo butter until I had the perfect roll, unbreaking 3 and looting 3, which were exactly what I needed. So I ran over to my anvil all excited to never have to deal with knockback ever again, and I added sharpness 5 in mending to this boy, and I once again named it the new Hinokami Kagura because honestly that old one is trash. I threw it down on the ground and I spit on it. Anyways, now that my god sword had finally been forged, I took it out for a test whack at the mob farm, and I mean, I couldn't really see the difference, but boy did I feel the difference. So in celebration of my new sword, I grabbed all of my remaining apples and I crafted them into a spicy 40 golden apples for the mass curing that was about to begin. And after this, I yeeted 2 potions of weakness at all of my zombie friends, and I then stuffed their faces full of golden apples. I really hope this ends up working, or I am going to be out a lot of golden apples. On day 175, I waited around for all of these boys to begin curing, and I finally have good news. One by one, as each of these dudes cured, their trades were finally actually going down. So I traded a bunch of sticks and string that I had in my inventory so I could level them up while also supplementing my struggling emerald count before leaving them all to continue their torment. And while they were suffering, I also ended up doing the same, or at least I would have if I didn't have the good old-fashioned keyboard macros, because I sat here in the auto stone generator for most of the day just whacking away at stone for my next building project because my animals were in desperate need of homes, especially good old Pablo the polar bear, because I got a lot of comments in the last video about Pablo, and if you guys keep that up in this video, I will also go through and heart any Pablo comments that I see because it amuses me, not gonna lie. Anyways, after gathering enough stone for the day, I went back to check on and cure the boys again, and this iron golem was trying to crack open a cold one with them, but that was not happening on my watch, so I smelted him with a bucket of lava, and I went back to waiting for the villagers to cure. And for some reason, moving them did the trick because all of their trades were getting better and better. So to hold me off with trading for now, I gave them as many sticks as I could for some juicy emeralds, and I was almost at 2 stacks now, which was small, but definitely a good start. On day 176, I went over to my potions of weakness chest so I could cure the zombie villagers again, and I ended up running out of brown mushrooms to make more fermented spider eyes, and it just so happens to be I was down to my last potion. So I threw that potion at the group of 4 zombies, unfortunately leaving out the 5th one because of how I placed them, and I fed them all more Gucci apples. And now that they were all set to go, I grabbed my nether compass and I headed back into the nether to hunt me down some brown mushrooms, which turns out were right in front of my portal the entire time, along with the surprise ghast that tried to blow it up. However, I was on my Mario Tennis A game with my blocks before I trick shot him out of existence. So overall, this was a good hunt, I would say, because I ended up with no more gas tiers for my effort and 10 new brown mushrooms that I planned on farming for infinite more this time. So I took my prize from the great mushroom journey and I traveled back home, and while going back to brew more potions, I ended up finding 3 more just chilling in the brewing stand. But you know what? I still needed these in the long run, so it works out in the end. And boy, did it work out, because while I was waiting for my potions to brew, I went to check on my villager trades after their latest cure, and they were now so close to perfection, because 2 of their trades were at 2 sticks per emerald, and the other 2 were down to 7, which hopefully means after the next cure, they will all be ready to be traded with. Either way, today was a massive success, and I spent the rest of my night just kind of brewing more potions and checking on the boys' infections, and one by one, curing each of them the final time before they had gotten the god tier 1-for-1 emerald trades. And as I cured each and every one for the final time, I also whacked each of the zombies out of the boats so I could no longer have to deal with that the next day. On day 177, I cured the final villager for the last time, and I killed off his zombies, so we were now ready to move all of these dudes into what I like to call the Hall of Capitalism. So I one by one boated them each over, and I put them into their respective cubbies by using the minecart trick, which ended up giving me very few issues, minus this one guy escaping and this final one refusing to work. But long story short, I had gotten all 5 of them into place, and it was time for some maximum efficiency capitalism. I traded with each of these guys for the max of 16 sticks that they could do at a time, and because the last guy was having a coming back to life crisis, I only ended up profiting a solid stack of emeralds, which was still safe to say that things were all up from here. So in celebration, I spent the rest of the night whacking away at more mobs in the mob grinder to repair Choppy Toppy and my RGB gaming wings, since they were still pretty damaged from that trip to the nether. And after I finished repairing all of my tools and gear, I ended off the night by feeding tons of wheat to my still submissive and very breedable cows, mushrooms, and sheep. And this was really loud footage. Rip my editor's ears. On day 78, I woke up with big plans on the horizon, because today I was going to start my new stone brick path for my next building project. So I grabbed myself a bucket of lava because first I had to clear away the old villager breeder, which meant first burning this iron golem who dropped his iron off of the side of the platform like an absolute Chad. But that was okay because I did the exact same thing to his 2 friends here, and no, I don't want to see any 07s in the comments for them because these guys had it coming. Anyways, I went over to commence some beautiful capitalism for the day before working on my stone project, and boy does this bring back memories of my villager trading hall and my OG hardcore world, because these dudes were producing mad stonks. After only trading for a minute, I walked away here with just shy of 3 stacks of emeralds. And now that my pockets were thicker than a Pixar mom and the traders were working on refreshing their trades, I began clearing out the frame of the old villager breeder because I was tired of seeing it and it was in my way. And after every fence and stone wall was gone, I filled in the section of dirt near my base, and I filled in the rest with more stone bricks for my next building project. And of course, I had no torches on me, and by the time I got back with some, the 3 musketeer skeletons were waiting to surprise me. But little did they know I had a bone to pick with them. Get it? If you do, I'm sorry, it's a bad joke. On day 179, after building part of my stone platform, I started to struggle with what I wanted to build. I wanted to put a horse stable over in this area, but I don't quite know how much space I wanted to have here in the future. So for this day, while I was lost in thought, I began touching up the areas that I already had. I began by replacing the edges of my paths with some spruce wood planks to act as an accent that matched all of my buildings, and I finally began replacing the super bright and ugly oak slab floors with some more classy stone bricks. And don't get me wrong, oak wood looks nice, just not like this. Anyways, after working on some of the floors, I had some huge inspiration for what I wanted the field by my house to look like. So I crafted some barrels and stone brick fence that I then placed around the perimeter, while also adding some spruce slabs on top of them, and I had an idea for the perfect accents. For each of the corner barrels, I added spruce fence that I turned into a small lamppost that ended up having hanging lanterns on it, overall to light up the area more, make it look a little more full, and make it look more classy. And of course, while doing this, I quickly ran out of those lanterns, but it's all good because I went back to my super helpful mending villager friend to buy a whole bunch more. Overall, this day ended up being a mixed bag for me. I was kind of unsuccessful because I stood around for half the day, and towards the end, I was very successful because by the time the sun came up, the whole perimeter had been done, and it looked really good. On day 180, now that the perimeter around this small nature area was complete, I knew exactly what I wanted to put in the middle. However, this was not going to be easy because it required me to go down several layers under what was already here. So I started by digging out an outline for this small little project in the dirt, and I used a bucket of water to place some cobblestone underneath. And after getting down there, I painstakingly built a bottom area out of this hole that I made out of cobble and cobble slabs. And if you haven't guessed it already, I was going to turn this into a small pond. So after finishing the bottom layers, I began adding bits of sand around each of the sides, which also turned out to be a pain in the butt, no pun intended, because each piece of sand needed to have a block underneath so it would not fall into the abyss. However, by the time I had used up all of my daylight, this whole thing was set up and ready to go, and that's where the troubles began, because filling this place with water ended up being an awful experience, because I could not get any of the water to become still for the life of me. In fact, I had to do this whole thing the hard way by placing blocks underwater and re-breaking them to update each tile of water. But by the time it was the middle of the next day, day 181, I had finally finished the water, and my 4 new fish friends from random mystery chests seemed to be digging it. However, I wasn't finished yet. I went over to my mending trader to buy 3 more name tags, and I took all 4 of the name tags that I had so I could begin naming my fish so they wouldn't despawn, even if they could, which to be honest, I don't really know. But either way, I came up with 4 perfect names for these dudes, which were oddly shark themed, even though I have no clue why because they were fish. Doesn't matter though. I decided to name them Sharpedo, Baby Shark, Kasame, and Gargura. And if you get any of those references, I mean, some of them are pretty obvious, but leave comments down below. Anyways, after getting the name tags, I jumped in the water to name each and every one of them, and after that, I spent the rest of the day adding stones around the pond, a nice little waterfall, I added some sugarcane here and there, I planted another tree, and I went around planting tons of grass to finish it off. And overall, this nature area added exactly the perfect touch that I was going for here. This gross, flat, bland world was becoming a real place with actual living nature. On day 182, I wanted to continue my streak of cleaning things up near the villager trading hall. So I first started out by adding another fence of barrels and some stone brick fences to the opposite side of the first ones, except I left a gap in the center, which was going to be the new center area for my stone farm, because I was going to move it because it looked like an eyesore. So I began laying out the front entrance to what would be the new stone generator until I ran out of room because of the old one. So I grabbed some buckets to steal all 4 of the water sources, and I stole the lava off the top, and after that I made quick work of tearing down the entire thing, and I rebuilt it exactly how it was, but with nicer blocks this time. No more gross, mossy staircases. Ew, slimy, bad. But anyways, after the new stone farm was built, I broke the old remaining fenced-in area that was built with mismatched blocks, and I filled in the surrounding area with the remaining dirt that I had for another cool nature area. And to finish this whole part off, I added more lamps to the side, and I filled in the grass blocks with trees and other plants, so that way there was no more empty space. And while taking a quick flight over top with my elytra, I was super happy with how this place turned out. And honestly, I hope you all like it too, because it's really, really hard for me to describe some of these things that I build without always saying the same things. Like, I'm like, oh, I think it looks good. Oh, I don't think it looks good. Oh, this looks cool. That looks cool. I don't know how to describe the things that I build. I struggle. So if you do like the commentary on that, I really, really hope you guys do. Leave a comment below. Let me know, because I damn myself conscious. Wow. Anyways, for the next 2 days, days 183 through 184, I was finally prepared to build my small horse pen so I could actually start using the horses, even though this was a 2 inches by 2 inch world. Totally gonna use them, not gonna leave them sit there, I swear. So I started off the day by replanting more spruce trees and flying to the top to chop them all the way down because I needed more wood after building the entire villager trading hall, because I am wood poor. So after gathering enough wood, I placed down a crafting bench and a dump chest nearby so I could go ham on building this stable, because I knew exactly the design idea that I had in my head. I began by placing more barrels that would work as the bottom part of the fence posts that would hold this entire place up. And after that, I spent until the end of day 184 working on the 3 individual horse stalls in the center. And after that, I added myself a roof on top, and I went around detailing all the individual areas, including the inside areas, the sides. I put some proper lantern lighting so no mobs would spawn. And by the time the sun was rising, this place was finished and ready to go. And the more stuff I build over here, the more comfy and roomy this place really just starts feeling. In comparison to the first 100 days, this place has really grown up. On day 185, in celebration of my new horse stable, I went back to the stick hall for some more juicy capitalism with the boys. I traded sticks with all 5 of the villagers and ended up with a stack and 16 emeralds, plus all of my tools were now mended fresh by the juicy XP. And now that I had the emeralds, I bought 3 more name tags from the mending villager, and I went back to my base to gather some saddles, I gathered some horse armor, and I grabbed another anvil because naming those fish broke the last one. Anyways, now that I had everything that I needed, I headed over to my horses so I could begin putting them in the stable. And the first horse that I jumped on was an absolute beast. Just look at this guy's health. This horse was like a boss horse because he was more stubborn than the amount of health that he had. But once I finally befriended him, I gave him a saddle and some diamond horse armor, and I rode him over to the first stall of the new horse pen. And while I was over here, I came up with the perfect name on the spot. I named her Shaltir because she was a powerful horse. Also, let me know down below which anime that's from, by the way. I know I keep asking you guys for comments because I've referenced a lot of things this episode. I'm sorry, okay? But anyways, after naming the first horse, I went back to get the second white one, and this one was also crazy strong, but for some reason super buggy because the horse wouldn't kick me off and it didn't want to be my friend. So I just kind of sat here until I finally got it to work, and I gave her some armor. After that, I took her back to the diamond pen, and this time I named her Albedo, which is also another super strong character from that very same anime. And now that I had the 2 white horses in their pen, I went back and gathered the skeleton horse, and I grabbed the zombie horse, and I named both of them Madara and Aizen, because both of them gave off massive antagonist vibes. For days 186 through 187, I began building a path that continued out beyond where the old villager breeder was so I could begin construction of my brand new iron golem farm. And not gonna lie here, while recording these 2 days, my power actually went out and I lost all of the footage of me gathering the supplies for this build and actually starting the collection area and the kill chamber. But yeah, this is what it looks like so far. Thank you, Florida, for that. Anyways, the way this setup works is there's a sorter that will take all of the flowers into this back area, and the rest of the chests will end up having the mad stonk piles of iron that will go from the iron golems. However, at this point, I was running very low on iron, and I needed 8 more hoppers to finish off this collection area, which, yes, I know, is very ironic. I needed more iron to build an iron farm. Who would have guessed? So on day 188, I was out on a journey for some iron. I began picking off any of the iron golems that were just kind of hanging around, but of course, now that I actually wanted them, they were nowhere to be found. I even checked on top of my giant house roof and nothing was up here, which is whack because these guys have been hanging out up there in the background of every single clip I've been recording for these entire 100 days. But unfortunately, since my place was now super safe and there was no more villagers in it, it was just not spawning iron golems anymore. So I went over to my villager trading hall and I melted 2 of them, and after that I ended up finding this guy in the top floor inside of my house, and I drug him outside by using a lead, and we won't talk about what happened after that. And after all of that grinding, I didn't end up with much, so I began checking any of the chests around my base for more spare iron, including my mob farm, which actually had 4. Overall, I was only able to make 5 of the 8 hoppers that I needed today, but I still placed them inside of the floor of the killing chamber before going back to my villager hall in search of more golems. And while I was here, I checked on my villagers, who now had 2 stick trades, which was not okay. Not in my house. So I grabbed more sticks to do some more capitalism with them, and some of them reverted back to 1 stick trades, so it looks like this might just be a false alarm, but it also looks like I might have to give them a talking to in the future. Either way, I spent the rest of the night waiting for golems to spawn in the villager breeder while using the patch dirt in the crops to my advantage when melting them with lava. Good times. Except for some reason they stopped spawning until the morning of day 189, when I mercilessly melted this final golem for the hopefully last bit of iron that I was going to get this way ever again in this world. And now that I had it, I crafted the 3 hoppers that I needed, and I placed them in the chamber, and I began filling in the edges with glass, stone bricks, and glowstone, so when these guys melt, the whole world can see exactly who not to mess with. After finishing the walls of the chamber, I then crafted 9 crimson signs that would act as the stopping point for the lava blade, because fun fact, nether woods are fireproof, just like me when it comes to burns in the comment section. Anyways, after adding the lava blade, I built out the lower collection platform that would push all of the golems that fall from the upper spawn chambers into the fiery depths of the center. And this process took most of the night until I was interrupted by a wandering trader that refused to have dark oak wood because apparently I was cursed. So I took my anger out on him by yeeting him off the edge. The nerve of these dang kids on my lawn, I swear. On day 190, now that the collection area was built out, I grabbed all of my buckets of water and I made myself an infinite water source so I didn't have to keep going back and forth while I struggled to get all of the water currents flowing into the center without any stagnant spots that the iron golems could get stuck in. And this process was kind of a pain, but I did quickly get it figured out so I could move on. And after this, I spent the next 3 days building 4 10 by 10 square areas that I filled with more water to push the iron golems that spawned inside of them down into the lower gathering chamber. I also added more fence gates to each of the areas where they would fall, and I added slabs around the walls so no golems could spawn up here and slow down the farm, because I speak from experience there, trust me. If they can spawn somewhere, they will, especially in a 1-block world. On day 194, after finishing the 4 areas for the villagers that were in between the 4 golem spawning areas, I flew over to my overcrowded sheep pen to make them all naked. I mean, get wool for villager beds. That's what I mean. And after getting the wool that I needed, I flew back over to the iron golem farm and I began crafting beds for each section of the villagers. And by the time this place was done, there would be 20 villagers total here with a minecart square in the center that would spin around with a zombie, scaring all of the villagers. And you know the drill. The scared villagers will then talk to each other about how scared they are, and then they'll start popping out iron golems like rabbits. And now the only things left for me to do was deliver the villagers and the zombie here and make the slab roof after that would stop extra golems from spawning on top. Which was going to be problematic to say the least, because I was going to need a lot more iron to make a minecart track to deliver everyone here. So I spent most of the night hunting more golems until they stopped spawning, but luckily I had enough to build the bare minimum amount of tracks that I would need. So I built some jank stone staircase all the way up to the top of the villager storing rooms, and I added golden rails to push these boys at sonic speed. And now all I had to do was boat 20 villagers and a zombie over, which is super easy, right? I mean, yes, but this was very time consuming. And honestly, I wanted to have enough time to give Pablo the polar bear his own new habitat and see how much iron this thing would produce, and then also go on to kill the wither. But at this point, it was looking like that wasn't really going to happen because this village delivery system took until the end of day 198. During this process, not everything went the right way. I mean, just look at this guy take my minecart boat into the abyss with him. Nice. I needed to get more iron after that one. On day 199, after getting all of the villagers into their torment chambers, it was now time for a zombie. And this was not going to be easy. So to prepare for it, I first bought a name tag for him and I named it Zabuza because this guy was going to be a killer. And at this point, I had 2 options. I could either build cover for the entire path so a zombie wouldn't burn during the daytime, or I could just wait until nighttime came, which would be much easier. So, I mean, that's exactly what I ended up doing. I built myself a small dark chamber right at the bottom of my ramp during the daytime, and I flew off to give enough space to hopefully spawn a zombie, and I kid you not, it was like the game had given me a break, because a zombie spawned on the top of the roof of my trading hall. So I slowly went through the process of luring this guy all the way over, and it was not easy, because he was pretty stupid, and that iron golem back there wanted to play ping pong with his face. But I finally did get him where he needed to be, and I lured him into the minecart and up and away until he came flying right back down because I didn't adjust the track up at the top, and this is where things got tricky. It took me a solid 5 minutes to finally get this guy up where he needed to be, and at this point the sun was coming up, so I had to hurry. I quickly built a roof of slabs over his track, and I struggled to push him down while he almost burned alive, or undead, I guess. But either way, he was finally on the track and all of his roof area was in place. And at this point, I hadn't even got him spinning yet. And this thing was already pumping out iron golems. So I dropped down to his track to give him a quick push start. And after that, I flew out before he hit me like a boomerang. And now my iron farm was officially in full swing. So at this point, it was now day 200 and I had just finished cleaning up the random blocks by the iron farm. And this thing had already produced me 52 iron in literally like 2 minutes of production. It was safe to say that my iron drought was now over. But there wasn't enough time for celebration because there were 2 more things left for me to do before these 100 days. The first thing I wanted to do was name and move Pablo the polar bear, and the second thing was kill those withers that I had gathered. So I began gathering the resources to make Pablo the home that he so well deserves. I grabbed some snow and a carved pumpkin, and I summoned a snow golem so I could farm the snow to give him a habitat that he wouldn't forget. Except the snow golem wasn't dropping any snow. And that's when I realized it. I was inside of a plains biome, which meant that I could not get any snow from him at all here, so I could not farm snow. So I kind of just summoned this guy for nothing. But I mean, I guess that kind of works because he can keep Pablo company when I did get snow. And speaking of snow I was going to get because we had already gotten this far in the world and I was not going to be stopped by something as stupid as a biome. So I concocted yet another massive brain idea. I gathered more snow and a pumpkin and I went into the end to test out if it worked here. And you bet it did. So I just kind of sat here farming snow for a good couple of minutes until I had a solid 2.5 stacks of snow blocks. So I quickly hopped my way back to the end portal and I began placing the barrel and stone brick wall around Pablo's brand new home. And at that point it started raining, which quickly struck down his new snow golem friend before they even had a chance to meet. Life is cruel. But like I said before, 1 block giveth and 1 block taketh away. Anyways, I quickly rushed throughout the night to fill this place in with snow and make it escape proof and also trying to decorate it, which was much harder than I had anticipated. I was trying to make a Christmas tree here with this tree and yikes. But anyways, this place had still turned out pretty nice in the end. However, I had ran out of time because it was now day 201. But honestly, let's just keep this a little secret. I still kept playing just a little bit. I went over and bought 3 name tags for Pablo and the 2 llamas that are at spawn so that way they could all be together. After that, I named Pablo, duh. And I named the llamas Rem and Rom after the 2 that I had lost in my original hardcore world. And one by one, I escorted all 3 of them with leads into their brand new home. And don't worry, Pablo will not eat them. I googled it. I only took like a minute looking it up, but I guess we'll find out in 300 days. If you guys get 30,000 likes, ooh. Either way, it was now thunderstorming and I definitely did not have the time to fight the withers. So I was going to have to save that for 300 days, which, like I just said, speaking of 300 days, if you do want to see that in the future, then please don't forget to leave a like down below. It really helps me out with the algorithm. If this video gets to 30,000 likes, then I will do 300 days. Anyways, that is the story of how I survived for 200 days in Block Skyblock. Honestly, this world is growing so much and I'm having a lot of fun playing it. So if you guys really do enjoy this, then don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe if you are new. Anyways, this has been PainDomination and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.